Hello, and welcome to another Italian tutorial. My name is Claudio, and today we go through the reflexive form. By far, the topic that causes most confusion in the Italian language. The reflexive form is when you have the subject carrying out an action to itself, and it's very common in Italian. Now let's have a quick look at an example. In English you say, I wash. But what you say in Italian is, I wash myself. And the way you add myself is by adding a reflexive pronoun in between the subject and the verb, just like in this case. As you can see, you have your subject pronouns, I, you, he, she, io, tu, lui, lei, noi, voi, loro. And then you have the verb to wash conjugated in the present tense. Lavo, lavi, lava, lava, laviamo, lavate, lavano. This is because the verb to wash, lavare, is an are type verb. We've seen in the present simple video that this is the right conjugation. What is the problem with this reflexive form? I told you what it is. So what's the confusion? Well, what confuses most people is that in Italian you also have things like, as you can see here, I've used the same verb, the verb to wash. Now, can you guess what this means? Now you see the verb, lavo, and you understand that it's conjugated in the first person singular, and you have your subject as well, io lavo. However, you don't have the right reflexive pronoun in between the subject and the verb. You have what seems to be, what appears to be, a wrong reflexive pronoun. Now, this is why people get confused. This is why all people get the reflexive form wrong. It's not reflexive form unless the subject carries out an action on the object, and the object and the subject happen to be the same person. Now, if I say, I wash myself, io mi lavo. In this case, I am washing myself. I am performing the action of washing to myself, which is me. So the subject and the object are the same. Tu ti lavi. You wash yourself. So again, you carry out an action on your own person. Therefore, you have reflexive form. Now, in this case, I wash you. Io ti lavo. So this is not reflexive form. And ti, this particle here, is a pronoun indeed, but not a reflexive pronoun. This, in fact, is an object contracted pronoun that we will see later on. And this is when the Italian language becomes very difficult, very tricky, and very confusing. And this is why I make videos on different topics, and I make sure that each video is self-contained to ensure that you don't get confused. So the next time somebody's trying to teach you the reflexive form in the wrong way, you're going to spot it, and you're going to be crystal clear on how the reflexive form works in Italian and how all pronouns work. Now, the deal here is, the secret to understanding all of this business is to have a clear table with all different pronouns so that you can spot what pronoun looks exactly the same to other pronouns. Because sometimes that's what happens. For instance, this is an object contracted pronoun. Basically, it's the contraction of te. I wash you. Now, we've covered subject pronouns and object pronouns already in the video called personal pronouns, because this is what they are. I wash you. I is the subject, you is the object. So far, so good. I wash you. This is what you would also say in English. But in Italian, what happens is that we get rid of the subjects and we also contract this pronoun and place it before the verb. Ti lavo. Now, as far as the meaning is concerned, these two sentences mean exactly the same thing. But this is not very common. And this is the common way of saying, I wash you. Ti lavo. Now, it so happens, now the confusion begins because there is confusion because it so happens that the object contracted pronoun ti looks exactly the same as the reflexive pronoun ti. But they are different. And if you're going to compile a list, make a table with all the pronouns, you will spot all these differences and all these similarities, and you will never get confused again. So all you have to take away from this video, and this is something that not many people really manage to understand for some reason, is that if the subject and the object are different, then you do not have a reflexive form. Simple as that. I will give you another example that get people confused. Mi chiamo Claudio. This means I call myself Claudio. Is this a reflexive form or not? Pause the video and think about it for a second. Now, it is because you have the subject and the pronoun being the same person. Chiamo is conjugated in the first person singular, so you know that is io chiamo, I call. So you know that the subject is I. Therefore, I call myself Claudio. This must be a reflexive pronoun. Io mi chiamo Claudio. This is indeed an example of reflexive form. Now let's have a look at the second example. Ti chiamo. Now, is this an example of reflexive form? Look at the verb. The verb is always what you have to pay most attention at and what you have to start analyzing from the very beginning. So we start by looking at the verb, chiamo. We see that it looks exactly the same as this one, which means that this is the very first person singular. Present simple, chiamare, to call. So basically, chiamo means I call. So io is omitted but should be there. Okay, so let's add it. Of course, in Italian we have this further complication of the subjects being omitted, and this also helps the confusion. But there is a way out. So you start from the verb and you understand what the subject is. It can't be but I, because the conjugation is first person singular. So I call you ti. This is, again, something that we will have a look at in the future. It's called object contracted pronoun. So it's an object pronoun that should be here after the verb. So it should be like this. I call you, but it was moved in between the subject and the verb. Io ti chiamo. So I call you. Is the subject the same as the object in this case? Of course it's not. I carry out the action of calling and you receives the action. So this is not reflexive form. And this is not a reflexive pronoun. So this is where the confusion comes from. Let's have a look at a very quick last example that is quite tricky. Mi piace mangiare. Now pause the video now if you don't want to know the answer and want to think about it for a second, but do you think this is a reflexive form or not? Well, let's have a look. First things first, we look at the verb. The verb is piacere, which means to seem nice, to seem good. This is an ere type verb. Therefore, we know the conjugation of this verb, and we know that when it ends in e, it's the third person singular. So it's either she seems nice, or he seems nice, or it seems nice. In this case, it's it, okay? It seems nice. But where is the subject? The subject is here. Mangiare, to eat, or eating. So eating seems nice. Eating is carrying out the action of seeming nice to somebody, to me. Me is another pronoun that we haven't covered yet. It's called indirect object pronoun. It means to me. Me. So basically, translating literally, this sentence means eating seems nice to me. And this is what you say in Italian to say, I like eating. I like to eat. That's what you would say in English, I like to eat. But translating literally is eating seems nice to me. Therefore, due to the fact that the subject and the object are not the same, this isn't reflexive. You're going to have to practice a lot to really understand the reflexive form. Now, there's nothing very difficult about the reflexive form. It's just not confusing it with something else that looks very similar and sounds similar. And unfortunately, a lot of teachers offline and online don't help. And also the fact that in Italian you omit the subject doesn't help. Okay, so you have a lot of things to work against. But with this video, I hope you've realized that it's not that hard. I hope you've realized the difference between the reflexive form and something that isn't reflexive. I hope that you can now recognize it, spot it, and that you can practice on your own a little bit. And don't worry, we're going to have a dialogue, we're going to have further videos, we're going to cover everything that we've touched upon in this video, and we're going to make sure that everything is clear. So it's up to you now to make sure that everything adds up. Okay, I think I've done enough talking for today. I really wanted to get this straight because I think there's a lot of videos that confuse people instead of helping. I will see you in the next video. If you found this video helpful, don't be shy. Click on the like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and leave a comment if you have a question. Take care.